And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. I'm your host, Dylan, back again with Ryan, here to recap Survivor Season 43, Episode 8. Ryan, we got a lot to discuss. I always say we got a lot to discuss, but it really feels like the last few episodes of the season, there's been a lot to discuss. It's been entertaining. I like it a lot.
Dylan, there is a lot to go over, and that's why I'm here. I'm recording. Ryan is not out fishing for 2 hours before the podcast. I'm here. I'm ready to go. A lot to discuss. I think a lot of people have been saying that just in terms of what we're seeing in the episodes, regardless of whatever you think about it, the first few episodes did feel kind of slow, a bit calm in some ways, and I feel like it's really kicked into another gear in the last couple of weeks, especially since the Earn the Merge.
Yeah, I kind of felt like the season started a little slow also. Like the first episode, I was like, and we spoke about this obviously on the podcast, I was like, I really like this cast. I feel like I kind of like a bunch of people. That was after like the first episode, and then we didn't get like a ton of action immediately. Whereas season 42, you had that crazy like Jenny vote early. So it was like that, like the action happens like right away. Whereas this is like, it's been like a slow buildup, but I think we're finally getting to that buildup.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think, again, people seem pretty mixed. I think if you go online and you see what people are thinking about the episode, some people, felt like it was an amazing episode. They thought it was really cool to see everything that happened with Janine and Jesse and everything else. And then some other people feel like the editing is letting us down again. We're not seeing everything. Things aren't making sense. Why are they leaving these things out? So excited to go over it.
Yeah. Now, before we get to like the chronological recap, wanted to mention something because you just seemed to bring something up that we discussed last night, right? And you said something about, I'll let you obviously discuss the point, but you were talking about how you thought that the Jesse idol thing with him ending up with Dwight's idol, that was misplaced and put in the wrong episode. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on that and like just to tell everyone what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously of two minds about it. Like, obviously, I love a great surprise. So when Jesse talks about how, and we'll go through the episode, but how Jesse reveals that he actually has Janine's idol, I almost fell out of my chair. It was the same type of reaction I had when Omer was saying last season to Mike, like, oh, Hai called you a puppet, Hai did this, Hai did that. And then Omer's like, I made it all up. So, like, that shock value is amazing to see. But then I thought more about it, and I think what I missed out on was like, I would have been so hyped coming onto the podcast last week if they play musical chairs with these advantages, Dylan, and then right before Tribal, Dwight goes, you know what? I'm actually going to give my idol to Jesse, and then Jesse just votes him out and pulls like a full Sarah Lucina with Sierra with a legacy advantage. Like, I would have been extremely hyped for it. Yeah.
I was going to say, or another way they could have done it is they could have done like one of those flashbacks during the vote, right? So like when Janine was reaching back to like, that looked like she was like trying to get the idol back from Dwight and everyone was wondering what that was and he didn't give it back. It could have been like flashback to like Dwight giving it to Jesse and then everyone would have been going crazy last week following the episode. So yeah, that is a way they could have done it. One thing that I told you is that I liked it because one sec. I liked it because it's like last week we're able to see the vote out from everybody else's perspective, not Jesse. Like nobody knew that Dwight gave that idol to Jesse. Everyone thought that Dwight left with the idol. We were put in the perspective of everybody else, not Jesse. And then as soon as this episode started this week, we were given the perspective of Jesse. So I kind of like how we were able to see both sides and like we were able to experience what everybody else on the island, minus Jesse, of course, was feeling at that moment. So I kind of like the way they did it, especially because Dwight did a great job of covering up that he gave it away to Jesse in all the exit interviews. Yeah. And that's hilarious itself and respect to him for that. So that's my thoughts on it. But yeah, what an unbelievable moment.
I mean, we were doubly fooled out because not only did we think from the episode that Dwight went out with it, Dwight kind of fooled us all in the exit press. And he was like, yep, no, I should have played it. Like, we were fully sold. So when Jesse goes, actually, no, I have it, people were losing their minds. And I think it was just something where people are going to have mixed opinions on whether they wanted to see it last episode or this episode. I think whenever you do a flashback, you can do it in different ways. Like obviously we see all the time, like someone found an idol a few episodes ago where it's like, oh, Nasir, oh, I found the idol like 5 days ago. So I feel like it in some ways this can be pretty cool, but I think other people wanted to see a moment like you see with Sarah and Sierra, or sometimes you see this in like South Africa or Australian Survivor sometimes, where it's like people are really making a savage move and they're really doing a great job. And I think I have to give credit to Jesse as well while we're talking about it, and then we can go through the episode, where just basically taking that window of opportunity to like bury the truth and have full secrecy of the idol, where it's like Carla's keeping a secret, no one else can, and now hopefully Jesse can keep this a secret. But it's like he has Sammy and everybody else confirming, no, Dwight went out with it. So now they're going to be completely shocked when he whips out Janine's idol, if he uses it.
Yeah, this changes everything, right? Obviously, like we had the whole discussion on last week's podcast about how this was probably too early of a move for Jesse and Cody to make. And now all of a sudden everything is flipped on its head. And we're like, well, wait a sec. Jesse had an opportunity to fully get an idol so he wouldn't have to give it back. And now nobody's going to know about the idol. Everyone's just going to think Dwight left with it. It was the perfect opportunity to make the move and take that idol for himself, because now he has an idol that nobody knows about, right? Whereas a lot of the different idols and advantages in the game, everyone knows where it is, except for, I guess, Carla. We haven't really that one out yet, but I don't think anybody knows about Carla's idol. So Jesse did a great job here. And look, he has 2 idols right now. Obviously, I assume he's going to end up giving that one back to Cody. But now he's still an idol for himself, right? So yeah, huge move. They're strong 2, and between the 2 of them, they have 2 idols. I mean, it's going to be incredibly hard to vote them out.
Yeah, and I wonder, are we going to see down the road, because we still have the 7 that we'll talk about in the podcast, like does this group stick together and how long will they stick together? I mean, you can make the argument that between the James and Carla power duo and the Jesse-Cody power duo, even though Jesse and Carla have a good relationship, the Civil War might happen at some point because they each have artillery that they can use against each other. And technically, Jesse doesn't have to give it back. I mean, even though Cody gave it to Jesse to hold on to, Steven Fishback confirmed on Twitter all the way back with Token Sheens, like if an idol or an advantage says it's non-transferable, then you can hold on to it, but you can't keep it. However, if it's just a regular idol like these idols now are, Steven Fishback confirmed if someone gives you to hold on to it, you now have possession of the idol. So even though it looks kind of scummy if you don't give it back, if like Cody asks for it, you're not required to give it back. So the matter of possession is very key here as well.
Yeah, Jesse's obviously in a great spot, and the fact that like nobody seems to even be like mentioning him as a threat. He's in like a power position right now. So shout out to Jesse for that move. She literally changes everything. But you know, I do want to get right into the Janine vote as well.
Yeah, poor Janine. We're 8 minutes in and we haven't even mentioned Janine.
Yeah, Janine voted out. Janine voted out. I have to say, I was pretty surprised. I thought that little last segment before Tribal Council where they're like, oh, are we making the wrong move? I think Janine's really the right choice. I thought that was just another misdirect to be like, all right, this is a simple vote. Everyone's going to vote Ryan, but we're going to make it seem like Janine has a chance to go home. I thought it was one of those. And the other thing that they switched is normally I've realized when the first name that comes out is usually not the one that goes home when they're revealing the votes. It's like usually like if it's between 2 people and the first name is Janine, usually it's Ryan that goes home. And it was the other way around. And I was like, wait a sec. I was like, that was pretty shocking to me. But, and we'll get into this right now, I think it was the right move to vote Janine out this episode.
I think so too. I mean, we can go through it, but I think strategically for both Sammy and then for the former Cocos in James and Carla, I do think it was probably the right move to stick with the Janine vote. And I think that's one more reason why people were a bit frustrated, Dylan, was because kind of like the Lindsay episode, like this whole episode, well, actually maybe not Lindsay, maybe like with Gio and Ryan when Gio went home, but it's like this whole episode was set up as like Ryan's going to go home because he's never at camp. He's always fishing. He's not part of the strategy. and we'll talk about if it was a good move or not. But it was like, oh wow, like Sammy wants this flip to happen, as Sammy always has his hands. He wants this flip to happen, and it was like it kind of got us all hyped up, and then it was like, oh, Janine was going to go home anyway. So, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think that, look, here's one thing I don't like is when people judge the editing without actually knowing. Like, we haven't seen the rest of the season yet, right? And to me, there's usually almost always going to be a reason why they show what they show and why they don't show what they don't show. That being said, to me, that says there has to be a reason why they overemphasized Sammy wanting to make the move really badly and then not making it. Does it mean that later on he is more reckless and makes a big move that he probably shouldn't make just because he wants to make a big move? Doesn't mean that we're supposed to see that Sammy was smart by holding back, even though he wanted to make the move. It was not the right time. So are we supposed to see that part of Sammy? Like, I don't know what they want us to see here. That's something that we'll figure out as the season progresses. So personally, I don't have much of an issue with it because we don't know what's going to happen next, right? So if Sammy, if his like, you know what I mean? Like if this episode, we can look back and say, I have no idea why they showed that. If like at the end of the season, we look back and say, I have no idea why I was like that, then I feel like it's fair to criticize. But given the fact that we don't know, what they're trying to tell us about Sammy, I feel like I can't judge that yet.
I think that's a very fair point because we don't, like, again, until it's almost like if you rewatch a movie or you rewatch a TV show where you don't see the foreshadowing until you watch it again because you don't know where they're going to go with the narrative. So I think it's a fair point because, yes, I mean, I do think the editing could show more, and we can kind of talk about that more as we go through the season as we wrap up 43. But I do think with Sammy, what they're trying to show us, I feel like, to his credit, is his maturity and his patience as a 19-year-old. Because I feel like whenever we see younger people play this game, and this is a generalization, they kind of are trigger happy to play hard, to make big moves. But we don't know how to interpret them. Like Xander gets a really great edit. People think, oh, he's playing a strong game for a young guy, and he gets no respect at the end because people don't see him as authentic. Whereas I feel like Sammy here, and again, this could prove either why Sammy wins. This could prove either why Sammy's a losing finalist. We don't know yet. But it's like we're seeing Sammy play hard for his age and try to like be mature, but we're also seeing his patience. Because I think at the end, Sammy realized the votes weren't going to be there and he held off. And I think if Sammy pushed harder to make this flip happen, I think they had the votes. They could have made it happen with Cassidy's votes, but they chose to hold off. And I think that shows his patience, that he's willing to back off if the votes aren't there. But we'll see.
Yeah, and that's like, that's something else I want to talk about, right? Like, they theoretically could have pulled, given the fact that Noel had a steal vote advantage, they could have pulled off the vote on Ryan no matter what, right? That's what everyone was talking about, right? So Noel had to steal a vote, so technically they would have, since it was a 7-4, and then they were getting Sammy on their side, right? It would have been 6-5. Technically, they could have just they had the number. They could, with the steal vote, they had the numbers, right?
I was going to say, I forgot she had the steal vote just because now with everybody passing things around, I forgot who has what. So yeah, they would have had the votes with her steal votes, but Dylan, they didn't even need it. If you think about it, if they were able to rope in Owen, Gabler, Janine, Noel, Sammy wants the flip, and then you pull in Cassidy because she doesn't like Ryan, you have 6 even without the steal vote. So they had the votes if they wanted to do it. But I think what I realized, and this is why I went back and watched the episode, when the guys are talking on the beach right before Tribal, and it's Cody, James, Jesse, and Sammy, and Jesse and James are like, let's just stick with the plan. Sammy kind of pulls in Jim Halpert, and he kind of like looks right into the camera, and he shakes his head. So I think that's where they're showing you he realizes it's not there, so he's going to just back off.
Yeah, I think he like handled it well, right? Like I was afraid that he was trying to make a move too early. It was going to come back to bite him because he was not really, like he was in with the 7, but like even Sammy told us he was bottom on the 7 right now, or at least close to it, right? So yeah, I think it was a good move for him to hold off, and I think he had the right approach for kind of just letting everything happen. One thing I want to mention regarding the Janine vote out and why I think it was the right move. One, Ryan is, based on what they're showing us, not a threat at all, right? He's, out there fishing. I don't know, again, if they're just emphasizing all this Ryan stuff and him fishing, is he going to just like skate all the way to the end because everyone realizes he's not getting vote? Maybe that's why they're showing it to us. Maybe it was just a storyline of this episode because he caught 21 fish. I don't know. But I think that it's a little interesting to me. The people out there on the islands right now, they saw all of 41 and then like half of 42. So they didn't
Yeah.
see Marianne win, but they saw Erica win. I'm wondering if they saw Erica win and how it was portrayed on TV of her being like, quiet, but like really, really smart. And, she wasn't a challenge threat, but like they kind of just like didn't worry about her. And then at the end, she kind of came on strong. I'm kind of wondering if like, and you even heard, I believe it was somebody said it. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Cody. She was really smart. And if you just let her hang around, that probably wouldn't have been the best move. So I'm wondering if like the Erica win was like fresh in their head and they were like, we can't let somebody who's like this smart and like kind of by herself and could bounce around hang around. Otherwise she could be dangerous.
Look, I mean, we always say from high school and college, correlation doesn't equal causation, but it wouldn't surprise me if in the back of their minds, they're thinking about who is a typical threat and survivor. And now in the new era, who is the new threat to be careful of. I'm not saying that's why we're already down to 3 women. We're at the final 10 and there's only 3 women left. So I'm not saying that that's the direct reason why. Having said that, I think there could be some merit there, but
yeah, I think there's something to all of this. I'm trying to think anything else that we have specifically by the Janine vote before we kind of go through other things that happened in the episode.
Just to eulogize Janine for a second, and then I know we need to get through the episode, but I just feel bad. I mean, Janine, I feel like is somebody who, if Janine wanted a second chance, I'd be fine to give it to her. First of all, the poor girl, busted her chin the first challenge, and she just has that giant thing on her chin. But like, she in the last 3 votes, Dylan gets voted out, loses her ally Dwight, and thinks her idol went out with him, but instead it went to Jesse, and Jesse then votes her out and keeps her idol. And then she loses before that her ally Ellie, and didn't save Ellie with her idol when she had it. And she loses Ellie, Dwight, and then she gets. It's been a rough merge for Janine, so I gotta feel bad for her a bit.
She was so incredibly unlucky, and it's funny because one of the other reasons I didn't think she was going home last night is because they kept like playing her up as the underdog story, right? And usually that underdog story, like when they play it up like that, they're not just gonna get voted out right away. So I was like, they were like playing up her underdog. They're like, she had everything go wrong for her. She's lost Ellie, she's lost the idol. And she's and then I thought she was gonna kind of like get out of it this episode, right? I thought she was gonna like figure it out, and nope. I guess they were just like, all right, this is the end for you, and that was it. So yeah, I was just surprised. I agree with you about the second chance. If there's a ballot for a next second chance season, or if there's a returnee season, then she should definitely be in consideration because she kind of got screwed. So. I mean, yeah, of course, it's partially her fault for some of the things that happened, but also like it's just a bunch of just unluckiness also as well for all that to happen in a row. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, let's get to the chronological order of the episode. We already discussed what happened right after Tribal Council with Jesse. That was insane. Again, I can't get over that still. I'm like the entire time thinking like, well, we have one less idol in the game, but I guess not. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else there that we didn't go over. But I think we kind of touched on everything there.
The one thing I will say about that, Dylan, though, is, and again, I'm trying not to read the edit too much because I think what we've learned from the last 2 seasons is that we can't read the edits. They do often still foreshadow things, and you can obviously interpret it how you want. And I wonder, because we were talking about Sammy, and we feel like Sammy's playing a strong game so far. Do we feel like Sammy is setting himself up well, like he said, to win this game? And he's going to make a strong case for himself? Because everyone talks about resume nowadays. Or is he betraying people in a way where they don't want to vote for him at the end? And I think that's another reason why it was smart for him not to flip, because he's already upset Janine and Owen and Gabler and Noelle by voting against them once already. If he now flips and takes out Ryan, he could have upset James and Carla and them. So then he has everyone mad at him. And I feel like when we see Janine say to Sammy, like, I trusted you. Like, she was really upset. Like, Sammy, I put my trust in you. Like, that could come back to bite him. So I feel like the only thing I would say other than that segment to see Jesse get the idols was that I wonder. I mean, and Sammy obviously speaks very well. He does really good at damage control. But he's got to be careful if, like, people see him as, like, the little brother or sees him as like a best friend type, and then he kind of backstabs them, not going to sit pretty with them at the end.
Yeah, I'm trying to like Sammy's in an interesting spot. Like I'm trying to figure out like he's in the middle for sure, right? But like now he has to like, when you're in the middle, it's a blessing and it's a curse, right? Like we saw Omer play the middle perfectly, seemingly, and then all of a sudden he gets voted out because Marianne realized that he was playing the middle and he was the biggest threat in the game, right? But he's in an interesting spot because like Owen needs Sammy, Gabler needs Sammy, um, Noel needs Sammy. So like those three are on the bottom. They need Sammy as a number, and yet the other players, the seven, they seem to be like pleasantly surprised with Sammy. Like they were like happy that he flipped, right? So they like want him there.
Yeah.
So that's why it was the right move for Sammy, is because like they're gonna need me anyway, right? And if I could get like Gabler and Owen and Noel to vote with me and they all voted for Janine. Everyone ended up voting for Janine except for Cassidy and Janine herself, obviously. So Sammy was like, all right, well, we're going to all vote together this vote, right? It'll be a unanimous thing. I'll let them in on it, but I'm also not going to piss off the seven that I just made friends with. So he has to like keep treading that line. I'm curious to see what happens next vote, because you're obviously splitting into a 5 and 5 at final 10. And obviously that's heavily, it's all random, right? The split is all random. So it's complete chance. Like, is he going to end up in a spot where he's with 3 Coco and he's on the bottom of that and they realize that this is a good opportunity to get him out? Or is he going to end up in a spot where he's with Owen and Gabler and they want to work with them still to maybe get out one of the 2 Coco that are paired with their 5 or something like that? Or are they paired with a Jesse and a Cody and they see an opportunity to make a big move there? So everything comes down to, for Sammy, in my opinion, if he could get past this double elimination, then he's probably going to be in a pretty good spot, and it'll be at least a lot more clear his path to the end for us to analyze. Right now,
so
it's a little crazy.
Yeah, so I actually forgot because for some reason I feel like this season I'm forgetting what the previews are. So you reminded me that we saw next week. Jeff says 2 people win immunity, 2 people go home. If we're gonna assume that 41 and 42 have like the same, carbon copy as each other, and 43 is the same, you're right. At the final 10 in the last 2 seasons, they've split the tribe into 2 groups. Each group has an immunity winner, and they each go to tribal council separately. So that obviously is a big test for the 7. I think a lot of us are feeling the 7 won't make it to these final 7 anyway. But when you have a split group next week and you don't know who's going to be thrown into which half, that could really, really shake some things up. I mean, especially if someone is in a half without their number 1 ally, they could get taken out. A lot of variables can happen. I feel like, honestly, you can make the case that in this chaotic group, any one of them could go home. I'm trying to think who would be the safest out of all of them. But I mean, it's any one of them could go.
Anyone could go. I'm going to guess that if the people with idols are in any sort of trouble, they're going to play it. I think that. So one interesting conversation as well, and we can talk about this, is Noelle could have used her steal a vote to get numbers here against Ryan. But in my opinion, that would have not been the right move for Noelle, because like what would it have really accomplished? Like you would have got Ryan out, and then you would have had, I guess, like you would have had Sammy on your side for this vote, but you don't really know if Sammy's on your side, so you maybe would have still been down in the numbers. You definitely wouldn't have been up in the numbers still, and then you don't even have your advantage left. You're still at only final 10, so it's like for Noelle, in my opinion, she was going to be on the bottom no matter what in this merge tribe, and she was not going to go home no matter what. So to me, it was just worth it to just save your advantage for a time where it could benefit you a lot more than this. This could be the perfect time for her to use that steal vote, right? Because you're at 5, and all it takes is, if it's a 3-2 vote, you could flip that on its head. So I would say that there is a 95% chance that some sort of advantages or idols are used this week. And I would say there's like a 75% chance that multiple are played. it's just one of those things. We saw it happen last season. I know that was a little bit of a different circumstance, but multiple idols did get played at this point last season. So I would not be surprised if something like that happens again. And I'm curious to see what happens there with the 5 and 5.
Yeah, no, I think that's a safe bet. So.
And then, yeah, so now we move in the episode to somebody that we haven't honestly talked about that much in the first 25 minutes of this podcast, but was a huge, part of it. And that was Owen. We heard his backstory, which we did not have yet. That was a cool backstory. It was great to hear. It was like nice to have like a personal moment from him, which I feel like we haven't really had. We've had like confessionals for him, but like other than like, strategy or like the joking part of him presenting the advantages, we haven't heard anything like personal for him. So that was really cool to hear. And yeah, this was obviously like a really big episode for Owen. Like clearly he was going to be voted out if he didn't win immunity.
Yeah.
And look, all of us anyone who's watching this podcast right now, anyone who's listening, any super fan, anybody who's been watching the show for years, you knew Owen was going to win that immunity because they were hyping it up so much about how he's in trouble. And then we had that weird moment where James was like, obviously, well, okay, before I jump all the way there, Jeff gave the opportunity to get Rice. 5 people had to step off of the challenge. And they had 4 to step off. And James turns around and goes, hey, Owen, you're safe. You should step off. Like, what? That was like, that made me cringe so hard. I was like, in what world is Owen believing that, right? And then Owen goes on to win. That was an awesome moment. Like, I'm so happy for him. I had a fantasy draft with you, and Owen was my first overall pick. So it's great to see him with a big episode here. And I'm excited for him moving forward for sure.
Yeah, and granted, we don't see everything. And on the TV show, it came off as very transparent. Like it's clear, like to us, what James was trying to do. Like, oh, Owen, sit out. You're totally fine, and then we're gonna vote you out. It's like almost like in Micronesia, where the girls were saying to Jason, like, oh, we're gonna, if you step off, we're gonna keep you safe. Like obviously, you can't trust that. Now, granted, we don't know if what we didn't see was like them all talking to each other. And Owen's like, oh, I don't know. I want to help us out, but I'm scared. And then James is like, oh no, you're okay. Like it could have come off better than that, but it did not come off looking good on the TV show. I think what I would say as well about Owen, because I think he did have a good episode. I mean, Owen and Ryan and Janine were the 3 big stars of the episode. I think one thing that we learned from his backstory as well, Dylan, was that he revealed that, he was left out of the vote twice in a row. Because we came on this podcast and we talked about when Ellie went home, did Owen vote incorrectly, or did Owen vote with Ellie in case there was an idol played or in case of something else happening? And now we found out for sure he was left out of the vote, just like Janine was twice in a row. So Sammy has left them out twice now. And I think it was interesting how they took his backstory and they parlayed that into, I felt left out in my life anyway. I now feel left out in the game because I've been left out of the vote twice in a row. So I think that was interesting how they segued that in, honestly.
Yeah, that was a good backstory, like spot for that. Also, like, I know we've mentioned this the last few podcasts. I'm still like amazed at how Sammy's name is not being brought up at all. Meanwhile, it's clear that he left them out of the vote, right? So now like Owen told us he was left out now, like you said. So it's clear that Sammy has left Owen out of the vote. What is Owen's incentive to keep him around? How is Sammy positioning himself so that Owen is still even listening to him, right? So I thought that was interesting. Like, I don't know how that happened or what's going to happen going forward, but like, I thought that Owen and Sammy were just like had this like working relationship where Owen was just being voting like whichever way to like prevent idol plays or whatever like the second option was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clear he was just left out. So I'm curious to see where this Owen Sammy relationship or maybe lack thereof goes from here.
Yeah, it'll be. I mean, again, Baca. I mean, this whole season has been chaotic, but Baca has been the clear hot mess tribe. So I mean, I'm not surprised that this is how it's shaking out, and I'm curious to see if Owen feels like he needs Sammy going forward or if a new group emerges and he feels like I can't trust Sammy. But I feel like he still wants to work with Sammy. I wanted to add one more thing about the challenge where this might be a hot take, Dylan. I feel like I'm kind of sick of seeing the negotiation. I feel like it feels very forced. I feel like when Angelina did it in David versus Goliath, I think Jeff loved that moment. And I think 3 seasons in a row now, he's like, oh, we're giving them less food. Let me do a negotiation. But Dylan, he's not even negotiating anymore. Now he's saying to them, because last season, I think he started at 6 or 5. And someone, I don't know if it was like Omer or Drea, someone was like, Jeff, if we get 4 people, can we do it? And he was like, fine, I'll do it. This time, James is like, hey, Jeff, I saw 41. You want us to set out 5 people. How about we set out 4? And Jeff's like, no. I'm not going to negotiate at all. In fact, if you don't do it today, I'm going to ask for more people the next day. I'm going to ask for 6 or 7 the next day. And it's like, Jeff, you're saying it's a negotiation, but you're not even willing to negotiate with the players. I feel like it's getting a little like forced at this point.
Yeah, look, that to me, that type of stuff is not appealing. Like I don't really care about them negotiating for Rice. The most interesting part is like the Owen having to compete, so he has to stay. And it basically like if it impacts the vote, which it usually does because people are sitting out and stuff. But I mean, there was nothing like crazy about who sat out compared to who played. It was like kind of just all expected. So to me, it was like there was nothing that exciting about it. But yeah, I don't really need to see it going forward. Honestly, it's a nothing to me.
Can we as we kind of head into the pre-tribal scrambling, can we talk about Ryan a little bit? Because I feel like I'm at a loss for words for Ryan sometimes, honestly. The man probably watched Pearl Islands before coming out here and is like, I gotta go full Rupert. I have to go full Rupert, and that's all I have to do.
In his pregame press, he said they asked him, who would you compare yourself most to? And he said Rupert.
This man, I mean, I'm going to read because I took down a quote from him, and I'm going to read you a quote from him before and after the challenge. The man is like, I want to be a provider, and that's my strategy. And I don't want to be seen as a threat. I want to work hard. And, I'm going to take 15 minutes to talk to the group before I go out fishing for 2 hours before tribal. Do you see anything wrong with that? Jeff even says whenever people go on a journey, what does Jeff say to them? He goes, now you can get an advantage, but this is also time where you're away from the group and you don't know what they're talking about. So Jeff is telling them you don't want to be away from camp when conversations are happening. And what does Ryan do? He deliberately leaves the camp. I mean, you can go. I don't know what else to say. This man does not want to play the game.
This is like it's like the Roxroy of last season, but like also the Roxroy of last season, but like it may even be more extreme. Like I don't think like Roxroy was like extremely old school, but he wasn't like they didn't like show him like saying to the camera that he was only going to strategize for 15 minutes and then leave for 2 hours. That was crazy. I don't, if you're there, what do you, unless you're just afraid, unless it gets to a point where Ryan's going to win every challenge, I don't see a reason to vote him out.
But I feel like, okay, and we've talked about this before. I feel like, granted, anybody can win challenges. Obviously, like, again, what we've learned in the last few years, Dylan, is that we can't predict anything anymore with Survivor. Like, again, before even let's even go before the new era. If you had told me going into Winners at War that Tony was going to win 4 immunity challenges, I would have said you're crazy. Tony couldn't win a single thing in Cagayan, and then Tony wins 4 immunity. So I'm not one to predict who can and can't win challenges. But I feel like Ryan and like Ryan's like body type, that's not usually who wins these challenges. It's usually a lot of endurance, a lot of balance, a lot of puzzles. Like I feel like Ryan's, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like Ryan's archetype doesn't win a lot. Like even Jonathan, everyone's like, oh my God, Jonathan's a big threat. I think Jonathan won like 1 immunity, but like he didn't win. Like I feel like Ryan is not someone who I'm scared of. I feel like Owen is someone that I'm scared of in these challenges going forward. I feel like, Noelle, I'm obviously always scared of Noelle. Janine could be pretty good at these challenges. But yeah, I feel like that's who I'm more scared of than I'm scared of Ryan in these challenges.
Yeah. Also, like Owen seems sort of well-rounded in like everything, and
exactly,
he could be a big threat in challenges going forward. And I'm curious to see if he does go on some sort of run here because I could see it.
I can see it.
but yeah, I don't know what to say about Ryan. I'm gonna have to see how it goes. Like I'm gonna have to see how it goes going forward. But we'll see.
I think with Ryan though, I think that like again, I see his point, and it almost came full circle in a way because I see his point where he doesn't want to be seen as a threat and he wants to just provide for the group. And you can make the argument that's why you were talking about earlier why Sammy made the right move. This is also why I think James and Carla made the right move to keep Ryan because, like James said, he's a number for them. Ryan's not going to flip on them. He's extremely loyal. And he's not a threat because he doesn't talk strategy. He gets a plan in place. Once you tell him a name, that's the name, and he goes out fishing. So that's why it's smart to keep a player like Ryan, who you know where his head's at. He's not going to flip. He's pretty safe. On the other hand, this is why we see people make an argument to get him out because Sammy is like, well, if I want to flip, who's the safest person to flip on? Probably Ryan, because I can make the argument that he's never at camp. He doesn't talk game. He makes me a bit nervous because he doesn't talk game with us. And the group seems to be like, yeah, I mean, out of all of us, I mean, if Ryan goes, I mean, we're not upset about it. So it's like, I feel like even though it came full circle why Ryan's not a threat in this game, you see how people made the argument about like why him not being at camp can be a reason to get rid of him.
Yeah, I could see. Yeah, I could see again. We discussed this in previous podcasts. I could see him being voted out strictly for a like we don't want him doing something to blow up our game. We've already seen him try to make like some kind of crazy move with throwing a challenge and like trying to trying to get I believe Cassidy out. Right, that was early on. We'll see. I do think he's gonna probably hit a point where we're gonna. I don't think Ryan's just going to go fishing the rest of the game. Like we probably will hit a point in the game where he tries to do something, and we'll just have to see if people like laugh it off or it's taken seriously, or if he tries something and it backfires. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with Ryan, but interesting for sure.
I thought the most interesting thing about this as well was that, and again, this could be like a underdog arc for Cassidy, maybe, even though Cassidy is in the majority. And I think you and I have talked about how Cassidy could be a dark horse in this game for a while now. We've been pretty high on Cassidy as a sleeper pick, but I think we see a really key conversation here where, you know, it seems like it's going to be Janine. Everyone wants to vote out Janine, right? And then the conversation at camp goes to like, okay, well, Ryan's out fishing. Maybe we can get rid of Ryan. Sammy goes to Carla. Carla goes to James. They go to Noel. They go to Cody. Like everyone seems on board to get Ryan out except for Ryan. And then we see a conversation later between Cassidy, James, and Carla. And Cassidy's like, well, no, I really want to vote out Ryan. And she actually votes for Ryan. We can talk about if this was on purpose or if she was left out of the vote. Because I'm not sure yet if she did it on purpose just to make a statement or if she was left out. But Cassidy's like, James and Carla, I want to get a guy out. Too many girls are going home. I don't know why you won't work with me here to do this. And like, I think Ryan's a threat. And I'm wondering if like, not just Sammy, but Cassidy's a key person to maybe flip as well.
This was a statement vote from her. She was not.
You think it was an on purpose statement vote?
Yeah, I'm like pretty positive. I think if they left her out of nowhere, that would be crazy, right? Because now you're just like, now you're giving massive incentive for her to flip, right? You're giving fuel to somebody else in the game to go to Noel, to go to Owen, to go to Gabler, to go to Sammy and try to flip the game on its head, right? There's no way she was left out. I'm just going to say that she probably just said, I'm voting for Ryan. You guys can do what you want. But like, this is what I want. I'm going to vote for him. I think she knew Janine was going home. I don't think that she felt right voting Janine out because of the reasons that she discussed.
Yeah. And again, I agree with you. If I had to pick, I think it was a statement vote. Then again, I thought we said that Owen voted strategically to split the vote with Ellie, but then we found out that he was left out. So we really don't know if she was left out or not. I would assume with how close she and Carla are, I don't think Carla would have left her out of the vote. So I think that she was making a point. But again, what the group doesn't know, or actually maybe the 7 should know this since they saw 41, is that a split tribe twist is coming up. And if you, and granted, obviously Cassidy has to know as a smart player that you're not always going to get your way. Like Sammy didn't get his way tonight. You're not always going to get your way in Survivor, but I think it comes down to how your allies treat you with not getting your way. Like if they said as a group, look, Cassidy, we know you want Ryan out. We think Janine is a better vote tonight, but maybe Ryan can be next. Like if they handled that better, I think then like you don't have to worry about Cassidy flipping. I think what we're seeing with James is obviously is a decent player, but we're seeing how he can kind of rub people the wrong way. Like he rubbed Owen the wrong way. It's clear that when Cassidy was on the beach talking to him, he was like not even entertaining her. And she was like, whatever, I don't care. You're setting up a spot where next week, if like James ends up in a spot where it's him and Cassidy and Sammy and Noelle and Ryan, you could easily see a scenario where Cassidy, not just Sammy, but Cassidy makes a jump as well. So I think this split tribe twist is actually coming at a really interesting point.
I do agree. Cassidy clearly is a major she's a flip candidate for sure. I think this week was the beginnings of it, and I think eventually she's gonna have to make her big move, right? She's clearly not the one running that Coco alliance. She's kind of just like there. And I don't want to make it seem like she's not playing. I don't want to make it seem like she's not making decisions. We're being given the perception that she is like the third person, right? So it's like Carla, James, and then she's like helping out with them, but she's not like running it, right? So I would think at some point she's gonna have to make a move to differentiate herself, and it could be coming soon.
I mean, she even says that at tribal council. She even says when Jeff asks her a question, just because I'm not like out there being the loudest voice, I'm not like the biggest name out there, I'm still, what's it called? I'm still making moves. Well, I mean, she didn't say I'm making moves because that would make her look like a threat. She was like, I'm still able to play the game, even though I'm being more subtle about it. So I think she's telling both Jeff and the audience, like, I'm here. Just because it's not a big flashy move doesn't mean that I'm not making moves. You need to make smaller things to do that. And I think you're right, where it's like, if I'm in the 7 or if I'm outside the 7, who do I see as like the main drivers? I feel like you see Cody and Jesse as a obvious pair. You see James and Carla as an obvious pair. Then you see, okay, well, there's Cassidy, who is with James and Carla, but like you said, she may be seen as the third. Ryan's in that group, but Ryan's just a extra vote for them. And then Sammy was in that group as well. So this is where we get to a point now at the final 10, whether there was a split tribal or not. Now you're going to start seeing, okay, who are the main drivers of the 7, and am I in their final plans? And if it's like, ooh, we have to take a shot at Jesse and Cody, or we have to take a shot at James and Carla, I think that could be coming up for both Sammy or Cassidy.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I think we've gone through everything in the episode for the most part. So let's get to questions right now. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in. Let me go through real quickly here. The Ohio State for the win wants to know, when do you guys think people will start to turn on James? James is running a lot of things, and Owen is starting to see that clearly. To me, the answer is next week. Like, it's going to be 5-5 split. If the numbers break the wrong way for James, he's in massive trouble. Yes, he could steal an advantage, but does he know where the advantages lie? That's a big question for Knowledge is Power. They could easily also just switch advantages, so he doesn't know where they are if they're trying to blindside him. And we see in the coming attractions that like Owen is like really starting to get mad with James. I don't blame him for it, and we saw it a little bit this week, right? So I would think that's coming very soon.
Yeah, people, I mean, it was mentioned really early in the episode, but people haven't forgotten that he has the knowledge is power. And if his own alliance mates or even people that are outside the alliance want to make a move on him because they swapped advantages around, they could try to make a move on James with the steal a vote, without the steal of votes. But people aren't going to forget that he's in a good spot positionally and he has a very powerful advantage. So, I mean, even though I've said for a while that James is in a really good spot, I think Carla's in an even better spot, because not only is her name not coming up, she has an idol that no one knows about. Just like Jesse. Jesse has 2 that people don't know about, which makes me nervous for him because usually people with 2 idols don't usually do pretty well. But I mean, Carla, I think, is someone who I think has better relationships with people, and I think she also isn't as rough with people as James can be in terms of how he was with Owen. So I think it could come soon, possibly.
Yeah, for sure. All right, another question here. So from K Benia, this is an interesting one, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, so I want to continue this conversation. K Benia 2.0 says maybe Sammy is Xander 2.0. I don't know. I to me, they portrayed Xander in a way that I thought he could win the game. And then he got no votes. Right now, they're portraying Sammy in a way that I think he can win the game, but I also feel like that. I feel like Sammy is getting more respect out there than Xander is, at least from what they showed. Right? Would you agree with that, or would you say that that's not what the case is right now?
So wait, what was your point again exactly?
I'm saying I feel like Sammy is getting more respect out there right now than Xander did. But it's hard for me to say that knowing what the outcome for Xander was, right? Like
Yeah.
in real time, maybe I would have said differently.
Do I think Sammy is getting more respect than Xander was? I feel like we never saw people say to Xander, like, I feel betrayed by you. Like we never saw people say, like, Xander, you left us out of the vote. We feel betrayed by you. People didn't vote for him because he wasn't authentic. And I think he seemed, a bit young, and people were just like, we don't think that you were genuine with us in the game. Sammy, I feel like, is doing a pretty good job so far because I think everybody seems to want to work with Sammy. And I think that Sammy's positioned pretty well. I just don't know if we're seeing people like Owen and Janine who have been left out of the vote twice now. And they're both on the jury. Dwight's not on the jury, but now everyone else is. So now you have Janine who's on the jury. We don't know how she feels about Sammy. Maybe she's upset with him. We don't know fully how, we don't know fully how Owen feels about Sammy. Gabler seems to like Sammy a lot, but all we need is for someone to tell Gabler, just like with Ellie, hey, Sammy kind of spilled a secret, and Gabler will turn on him like that. So I don't know if I can say Sammy is Xander 2.0 yet. It might be too early, but it wouldn't be surprise me if he kind of suffers a similar fate.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying. I think I agree with it. Other questions here. We have from Jay. He says, do you guys think they should do a twist on the Rice negotiation where 3 people sit out, lose their vote for Rice, with those sitting out likely in the majority, thus allowing for a better tribal? Personally, I don't think anybody would sit out for Rice if it cost them their vote.
Okay, so you're saying if Jeff told them if you sit out, you get Rice, but you also lose your votes?
Yeah.
Oh, no, nobody would voluntarily sit out if you could lose your vote. So no one would sit out if Jeff told them, if you do this, you will lose your vote. People risk their vote all the time at these island journeys because they have a chance of getting something. There's no way, even for the good of the tribe, people would sit out if they were told they could lose their vote.
Yep. Yeah, no, nobody's sitting out there. All right. I think.
Dylan, would you? I'm just last question. Would you sit out?
Would I sit out? Are you talking about like the what we have right now, or if I had to call sacrifice my vote?
No. Like what we saw on the show. Like if you were in that spot where Jeff says we need 5 people to sit.
Boston Rob tweeted this, and this is not shocking from Boston Rob. He was like, "What's up with?" He basically said, "What's up with people in the modern day sitting out?" Like I would never sit out. I cannot ever see myself sitting out as a paranoid person like I am. No way. There's just no way. There's no way I could give up a chance to be safe for Rice. I know that's easy for me to say sitting on my couch, completely fed and not hungry, but I cannot see myself sitting out.
I think for me, and again, I think like you, I might be a little bit paranoid or I just want to play the game. I just think as a fan, and maybe I'm overthinking what my friends and family would say. In my mind, I just would like, I could live with myself if, like Janine, I decided to play and I was the first one out after a few minutes. And it's like, I gave it my best shot. I don't think I could live with myself if I sat out and I was like, okay, I'll sit out, and I got voted out right away. I got voted out. I just feel like, at least I could say that I tried. I would probably never sit out. Even if it's like when Jeff says in the tribal portion, we need 2 people to sit out. You have 2 extra members. I just don't ever want to sit out.
Yeah. I mean, I would not be able to live with myself for sure if I got voted out after sitting that out.
I just want my fate in my hands, basically.
Agreed. All right. I think we're going to make this the last question here. Sure. From Jay here again. He says, do you guys think they should lower shot in the dark odds to 1 to 4 to encourage people to play it? That's another thing that has not been brought up at all. I honestly don't even think about it in the episode. Like, I don't think about it. And then after, always like I'm watching a podcast and someone's like, well, Janine could have played her shot in the dark. She lost the vote 9 to 2. She said in their exit press today, she never even considered it really. I don't really think it's a major option for anybody. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think Janine basically said that she played a relationship game, and that I guess in the case that she was safe last night, but she played the shot in the dark anyway. She didn't want it to like break possible bonds that she had made. So I don't honestly think that we're gonna see anybody use the shot in the dark this season, and we'll see what happens in 44. But if it doesn't happen 4 seasons in a row, is there a reason to keep it around?
Yeah, I just think both the audience and the players forget about it. And I think it's because people saw it fail once and they didn't want to try it again because obviously 42 didn't see that season. And I also think, like Jeff said in Tribal Council, every group that goes out to play, they form their own social construct and they all form like basically 42 plays different than 43, 43 plays different than China. Like every season has its own different social rules. And according to Janine in the Exit Press, this group was kind of like, okay, we saw what happened with Ellie. We saw what happened with other people, with Lindsay. You stick your neck out too much and you kind of don't lay low, you go home. I think people were like, I don't even want to play it because even if I'm safe with it, I'm going to go home next week. I think people just don't want to stick their neck out too much.
Yeah, I agree. All right, last question, actually. One last one here from Jay also, who says that, quote unquote, it's his last question, he promises. Yeah, thank you. By the way, thank you, Jay, for being in every week live, asking questions. We really appreciate it. He says, how do you guys think they can make Final 11 more interesting since the past few Final 11 rounds have been a dog pile landslide vote out? My answer to that would be, I feel like in every Survivor season, you need to have some simple votes, right? Not everything could be insane. And I know that, Final 11 specifically has been, like you said, a few dog pile votes in a row. But sometimes you need that in Survivor, right? I don't think every vote could be completely crazy. I think that there are some simple votes that need to be had. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I would say I'm more of a Survivor purist. Like, obviously, I'm fine with idols, of course. I just feel like we have too many idols and advantages. So I don't think I need to make the final 11 more interesting. I just think with how the last few seasons have played out, it becomes a dog pile. But you could also argue we merged too early nowadays. I feel like you could argue we need to go back to where we merged at 10 back in the day. Maybe merging at 12 or 13 is just way too much. And that's why the early merge votes are kind of a dog pile anyway. So I feel like we don't need to add more twists in to make it interesting. I think the game in its raw form is fun enough. Maybe just merge a bit later like you used to.
That's a good point. I think that's a very good point.
Bring back tribe swaps.
we have seen early merge, and I would be very down for bringing back tribe swaps. I've said that multiple times now. So, but anyway, thank you guys for watching this week. If you are watching, be sure to like the video, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Really helps us out. And we will be back next Thursday to discuss episode 9.
And with that, grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.